So Tony Harrison is coming back, making his return at middleweight. Of course, Tony Harrison was a mainstay in and around the top of the division at 154 for a few years. He had some notable fights against Jamal Charlo, two fights against him, a fight against Tim Tszyu, and a fight against Jared Hurt. He lost to all three guys. He beat Jamal Charlo once though, and that fight, in my opinion, really exposed Jamal Charlo in terms of him being a guy who, yes, throws punches and yes, can punch, but he's got some defensive liabilities and defensive sort of gaps that can be exposed with good, clean, crisp counter-punching, which is what Tony Harrison did in that first fight. He clearly didn't have the chin or, to stand up to Jamal Charlo's punches in the second fight. He eventually got stopped by Charlo and held a beating, to be fair. Had his moments, but Charlo is a far better puncher than Tony Harrison, without a shadow of a doubt, right? And then fought a few years later, would fight Tim Tszyu, and Tim Tszyu put a beating on him, right? That stoppage in the, I believe, the 10th round, or 9th round maybe, Tim Tszyu was landing some clean shots to the head of Tim Tszyu, and that was his last fight. Tim Tszyu was landing clean shots to Tony Harrison, and that was Tony Harrison's last fight. That was 2 years ago, but wow. Tim Tszyu, that's probably Tim Tszyu's best win of his career, or maybe not best, but up there, right? And was landing some big, clean shots to Tony Harrison's head. That no surprise he took 2 years off after that beating and that stoppage, right? Was bad. He was out on his feet for a while. Tim Tszyu just kept throwing, keep landing, and then eventually the ref came in and broke it up. But yeah, a bad loss for Tony Harrison in his last outing, but he seems to have seemingly recovered 2 years out. He's now fighting at middleweight against some guy who's 15-6. Never heard of him. I'm going to assume Tony Harrison, the guy who's a former world champion, been in there with multiple world champions too, is going to win this fight against a guy who I'm assuming is a bit of a nothing guy at 160 who Tony Harrison's going to be fighting, right? Now, Tony Harrison's had an interesting career. Like I said, he's not a world-level boxer. He is a former world champion, but he won that fight against Charlo, then lost it in the rematch. Everyone he's fought at world level has beaten him. Right? Even that first Charlo fight, I think Tony Harrison, showed some really good counterboxing and counterpunching, but Charlo was landing on him, quite often and was putting hands on him at times. And then the second fight, completely put hands on him. But yeah, interesting to see Tony Harrison come back after 2 years. I don't think he's going to be able to do much at 160 in terms of at the top of the division. I don't think he's got that left in him. Even in his prime, he wouldn't have had that in him, like I said. Because if you couldn't do it at 154, I don't fancy you to do it at 160. I don't think he causes anyone at the top of 160 any problems, but we'll see. Stranger things have happened, and Tony Harrison's back, and if he wants to make a run at 160, then he's got to win this next fight. Right? He can't become he can't have two back-to-back losses. At that point, you may as well retire. Right? So yeah, I'd be curious to know what you guys think of Tony Harrison's career and what you think of this comeback fight. Yeah, I'm probably not going to watch it. I'm probably going to check out the highlights the day after. But yeah, be curious to know what you guys think. Another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest in the bag, and I'm out. Peace.